Ever wonder what happens when you're not home? I used to. Now I wish I'd never found out. I was in Chicago for work, thinking I was building a future. One click on my security app showed my husband wasn't just wrecking our past. He was stealing my future. What they wanted wasn't in the bedroom. When they stared right at the camera, right at me, I froze. But that freeze didn't last. It turned to ice. My name is Ilara Vance. The silence of the five-star hotel room in Chicago was a pressure against my eardrums. It was just past 10 at night. My presentation, the one I'd lost sleep over for weeks, had been a massive success. The adrenaline had finally drained away, leaving nothing but the sterile scent of industrial cleaner and the low hum of the city ventilation system. I was 34 years old, a senior data analyst at one of the country's top firms, and I was looking at a bonus that could finally get us out of debt. I felt a sharp pang of guilt. I was here, in this massive, empty suite, while my husband, Mark, was back home in Denver. He was 36, a freelance financial consultant, which was a polite way of saying he was struggling. I'd felt bad leaving him, bad that I was the one succeeding, bad that, if I was honest, I was enjoying the peace. I was in the bathroom, staring at my tired reflection in the oversized mirror, when my phone buzzed on the cold marble countertop. It wasn't a text or a call. It was a push notification, emblazoned with the red logo of our Very Sure security system, Motion Detected Home Office. My blood went cold. That wasn't right. Mark knew the rules. The office was my territory, a requirement for my security clearance. It was where I handled sensitive client data for Spectra Analytics. He was never, under any circumstances, to go in there when I was traveling. It was the one inflexible line in our marriage. My heart gave a heavy, painful thud. I grabbed the phone, my thumb slipping on the glass. I unlocked it and tapped the app. The loading circle spun for an agonizing second, the audio connecting first, filling the silent bathroom with the faint, tinny hiss of an open microphone. Then the video feed resolved. My office, my desk, my chair, and Mark. He was there. My stomach tightened into a knot. But he wasn't alone. Standing beside him, her back to the camera, was a woman with familiar blonde hair. Chloe Sullivan. Chloe. My best friend since our dorm days. The godmother to my hypothetical children. She was 33. She was also one of Mark's few clients, supposedly getting help managing her finances after a messy divorce. A wave of dizzying, cinematic nausea washed over me. I almost threw the phone down. The cliché of it all was sickening. My husband, my best friend, in my private office, while I was 2,000 miles away, working. My finger moved to kill the app. I didn't need to see them kiss. I didn't need to see what came next, but I paused. My finger hovered over the screen. Something was wrong. They weren't touching. They weren't looking at each other. They were both facing the far wall, standing in front of the heavy, fireproof safe. I kept hidden behind a framed blueprint of the Golden Gate Bridge. My safe. Mark was holding a small, black electronic device against the digital keypad. It looked complex, technical. Chloe was pressed against him, but not in passion. She was looking over his shoulder, her own phone held tight to her ear. She was listening intently, then speaking in a low, clear voice, reading numbers back to Mark. Try 7-1-3-3. Mark typed. The device in his hand whirred softly. They were working together. I stopped breathing. The hotel room was gone. The city was gone. My entire world had shrunk to the 4-inch glowing screen in my hand. Mark muttered something I couldn't hear, and Chloe spoke again. He says the secondary bypass is active. Use the auxiliary code, 884. Mark tapped the final number. The keypad on the safe flashed a bright green. There was a heavy mechanical thunk that I felt in my own chest. The steel door clicked and swung open. Mark didn't hesitate. He reached inside, his hand moving right past the velvet boxes containing my grandmother's diamond earrings and my mother's pearls. He ignored the thick envelopes of emergency cash. He bypassed tens of thousands of dollars worth of tangible assets. His fingers closed around the one thing in that safe that was irreplaceable, the encrypted hard drive. The drive that held my entire life's work, proprietary algorithms for Spectra, and classified data from 3 of our biggest clients. He pulled it out, a simple, matte black rectangle. And then, the moment that shattered everything. He didn't hand it to Chloe. He didn't turn to the computer. He just stood there for a second. Then, slowly, as if sensing me, he turned his head. He looked directly across the room, his eyes finding the precise hidden location of the pinhole camera, the camera he had insisted on installing for my protection. He looked right at me. A smile spread across his face. It was not the warm, loving smile I had known for 7 years. This was a smile of pure, cold, triumphant calculation. He knew. He knew I was watching. He held the hard drive up slightly. A little toast, just for me. He reached a hand off screen, toward the wall socket. The audio crackled. The image dissolved into a blizzard of digital static. The screen went black, displaying 2 simple words, connection lost. I stood there, phone in hand, staring at my own ghost-white reflection in the dark glass. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just froze. Staring at the black screen, my life didn't flash before my eyes. It assembled itself, piece by piece, like a beautiful mosaic I was only now seeing was glued together with lies. Our life in Denver. It was perfect, wasn't it? The penthouse apartment with the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Rockies. The weekend ski trips to Vail, sipping expensive wine by the fire, laughing with our sophisticated, stylish friends. It was the life I'd worked my whole career at Spectra Analytics to build. It was the life Mark had stepped into so seamlessly. I met him at a tech fundraiser 3 years ago. I was there because Spectra had bought a table. He was there. Well, I never really knew who he came with. He was just there, radiating a confident, easy charm. He listened. God, he listened. He nodded in all the right places when I complained about the pressure of my job, the non-stop hours, the complex security protocols. He seemed to get it. He wasn't intimidated by my success. He said he admired it. He was the freelance consultant, the free-spirited counterpoint to my rigid corporate life. He made me feel seen, and he made me feel safe, and Chloe was always there, my anchor, my sister. We'd been inseparable since college, when her own marriage imploded 2 years ago, leaving her a financial wreck. Introducing her to Mark felt like the most natural thing in the world. Let him look at your portfolio, I'd insisted, proud to offer a solution. He's brilliant with this stuff. She was hesitant at first, but soon they were meeting weekly. My 2 favorite people, becoming friends. I thought it was wonderful. I thought I was helping. Now I see the image the 2 of them, heads bent together over spreadsheets at our kitchen island, while I rushed around in the background, stressed about a late meeting. A perfect domestic scene, a perfect conspiracy. The lies were subtle. They were always painted as concern. Mark was always so protective of my work. Are you sure Spectra's firewalls are strong enough? Laurie, he'd ask, rubbing my shoulders after I'd worked a 12-hour day. What kind of protocols do you guys use for remote access? I just worry about you. It's a dangerous world. I'd explained it all to him. I'd laughed at his furrowed brow, charmed by his interest. I thought he cared about my stress. He was just mapping my defenses. And Chloe's coincidences. The times she'd just happened to be at the same restaurant where I was having a dinner with my team. Oh my God, Alara. What are the chances? She'd squeal, sliding into the booth. She'd charm my colleagues, especially the junior analysts, the ones with lower-level access but knowledge of the systems. She'd buy them drinks, remember their birthdays. She was just being Chloe, I thought, my social, lovable best friend. She was building her network of assets. The memory that makes me want to vomit now is the day he installed the Very Sure security system. It was a gift, just after I got my last promotion. For your safety, he'd said, kissing my forehead. For my peace of mind when you're working those crazy hours in the office. He spent an entire weekend installing it himself. He refused my help. I want to do this for you, he insisted. He put a camera in the living room, the kitchen, the hallway, and he put one in the office. The one I told him was against protocol. It's for internal use only. Laurie, he argued gently. It doesn't broadcast externally, only to our secure app. I just want to know you're safe in there. He installed it. He knew exactly where the blind spots were. He knew exactly where to look. My vision blurred. The hotel room was suffocating. I thought of the one person who had ever seen through him, Dr. Eris Thorne, my mentor, the eccentric, brilliant recluse who had recruited me into spectra analytics straight out of my master's program. Eris was my real family. He was a genius, a man who saw patterns in chaos. He'd retired early, citing burnout, but he and I still met for coffee every month, until 6 months ago. A sudden heart attack, the doctor said. Massive, unexpected. He was only 62. He was healthy. I remembered the last time I saw him, just after Mark and I got engaged. We were at his cluttered house, the air thick with the smell of old books and soldering flux. I'd flashed my ring. Giddy. He hadn't congratulated me. He just stared at Mark, who was charmingly examining an antique globe in the corner. When Mark went to the bathroom, Eris turned to me, his eyes sharp and serious. He's a salesman, Alara, too polished. He's a consultant, Eris. I'd laughed, offended. He's selling you something, Eris insisted, his voice low. A salesman is too perfect. He mirrors you. He validates you. It's a technique. No one is perfect. Alara. They just have better hidden secrets. I'd been furious. I accused him of being jealous, of being a bitter old man who couldn't stand to see me happy. I told him he was wrong. I left his house angry. I never saw him alive again. Standing in that Chicago hotel room, the black screen of my phone felt as cold as a tombstone. Eris wasn't jealous. He was warning me. I didn't sleep. I watched the digital clock on the hotel nightstand flip from 2:59 a.m. to 3 a.m. I didn't weep. I didn't rage. The freeze had set in, a deep, cellular paralysis. I was supposed to be at a 9 o'clock celebration breakfast. Instead, I was in a taxi to O'Hare before 7, my laptop bag digging into my shoulder. I'd walked straight to the ticketing counter, my face a blank mask. The first available flight to Denver, any seat. The 3-hour flight was a pressurized coffin. I paid for the exorbitant in-flight Wi-Fi, my hands shaking so badly I kept mistyping. I tried to log into my Spectra Analytics work portal. Password incorrect. That's impossible. I typed it again, slowly, deliberately. Password incorrect. My breath hitched. I clicked, forgot password. My security questions appeared. What was the name of your first pet? I typed Gatsby. Answer incorrect. I tried my joint bank account with Mark. Password incorrect. My personal savings account, the one I'd had since college. Password incorrect. My brokerage account, where I kept my bonus stock. Account locked due to suspicious activity. It wasn't just a theft. It was an erasure. I was being digitally executed at 30,000 feet, and there was nothing I could do but watch. I landed in Denver in a daze, walked right past the baggage claim. I didn't care about my clothes. I got into a taxi and gave my address, the address of my beautiful penthouse, and my voice sounded like it belonged to a stranger. The ride through the city was unreal. The buildings looked like cardboard cutouts. I got to my building, rode the silent, mirrored elevator to the top floor. The hallway was quiet. I walked to the solid oak door of our apartment, the one I'd been so proud of. I slid my key into the lock. It didn't go in all the way. It hit something solid. I pulled it out, stared at it, as if the key itself was the problem. I tried again, jamming it in harder. It was useless. He had changed the locks. The ice in my veins didn't just crack, it exploded. The paralysis vanished, replaced by a white-hot chemical rage. I stopped trying the key and started pounding. I hammered the door with both fists, the sound echoing in the expensive, empty hallway. "Mark, open this door, Mark. I know you're in there. Open it now." I heard muffled footsteps, the click of a deadbolt I hadn't locked. The door opened a few inches. Mark stood there, blinking against the light. He was wrapped in a plush white towel, his hair wet and tousled. He squinted, the perfect picture of a man woken from a deep sleep, his face a mask of groggy confusion. "Alara, what on earth?" His voice was thick. "Your flight wasn't until tonight. Baby, what's wrong? Are you okay?" I said nothing. I shoved the door open, hard, pushing him back into the marble foyer. I stormed past him, my shoes leaving tracks on the polished floor. "Where is she?" "Where is Hulari? You're not making any sense. What's going on?" He was walking behind me, the picture of concern. "Chloe," I screamed her name. "Where is she? Where is the hard drive I saw you? I saw everything." I stalked toward the office, my heels clicking like gunfire. He grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly tight. "Ilara, stop. You're hysterical. What are you talking about?" "The camera." I ripped my arm from his grasp. "I saw you last night, you and Chloe, at the safe." I reached the office door. It was closed. I grabbed the knob. It was locked, just as I always left it. I typed in the 4-digit code. The light flashed green. I threw the door open. The room was still. The air was cool. Everything was exactly as I had left it 2 days ago. The blueprint of the bridge was hanging perfectly straight on the wall, hiding the safe. Mark came up behind me, his voice lowered to a tone of deep, wounded concern. "Alara, please. You're scaring me. You've been acting so strange all week. The stress of this trip. It's getting to you." "The safe," I whispered. I walked to the wall, pushed the frame aside. The safe was closed. The digital keypad was dark. My fingers trembled as I typed in my code. My code. The one I had never, ever told him. The mechanism clicked. The heavy steel door swung open. I looked inside. My heart stopped. Everything was there. The velvet jewelry boxes, the envelopes of cash, and sitting right on the top shelf, exactly where it was supposed to be, was the matte black, encrypted hard drive. I stared. I reached in and picked it up. It felt heavy. It felt real. "It's here," I said, my voice hollow. "But I saw you." "I saw you take it." Mark let out a long, pained sigh. He pulled his own phone from the pocket of the robe he must have grabbed. "Ilara, let's just look. Okay, let's just check the footage. We'll clear this up." He opened his Very Sure app. He tapped Home Office. He tapped Event History. He scrolled to last night, to 10:15 p.m. He pressed play and held the phone up for me to see. The screen showed my office. Empty. The lights were out. The moonlight from the window cast long shadows on the floor. The timestamp in the corner ticked forward. 10:16, 10:17, 10:20. Nothing. Just an empty, silent, peaceful room. "See?" he said gently, as if speaking to a child. "Nothing, honey. You were exhausted. You must have had a nightmare. It's the only explanation." He'd done it. He had wiped the server footage and replaced it with a clean loop, a simple data splice. He knew I'd know it was possible, but he also knew that seeing it, seeing this proof, would make me question my own mind. He put his arm around me. I was shaking. Was I crazy? Had I imagined that smile? The connection loss was Eris wrong? Had the pressure finally broken me? "You've been pushing yourself way too hard," Mark whispered, stroking my hair. "That presentation, the pressure from Spectra, it's too much." He delivered the final devastating blow. "Chloe even called last night," he said, his voice full of sympathy. "She was worried sick. She said you weren't answering any of her texts. She just wanted to make sure you were okay." The mention of her name, used as a tool of loving concern, made my knees buckle. I felt the world tilt. He was right. I was wrong. I was losing my mind. I leaned against the doorframe, dizzy and defeated. I need to lie down. Of course, baby. He started to guide me out of the office. Let's get you to bed. You just need to sleep. I let him turn me, my feet like lead. I was hollow. I was insane. And then I saw it. On the dark hardwood floor, just inside the office threshold, gleaming in the light from the hallway. It was almost invisible, a single, delicate thread. But I saw it, a long, blonde hair. It wasn't mine. My hair is dark brown. It was Chloe's, bright, golden, unmistakable, lying right on the spot where I had watched them stand. The fog in my head didn't just clear, it vaporized. I didn't hallucinate it. I wasn't having a nightmare. I wasn't crazy. I stopped walking. I looked up at Mark, at his beautiful, kind, worried face, the perfect mask. I knew I wasn't insane, and I knew I was in more danger than I could possibly imagine. I forced a weak smile. You're right. I'm so sorry. Mark, I'm so tired. The presentation took everything out of me. I think I am going crazy. His worried expression softened into relief. It's okay. I was just scared. He kissed my forehead, his lips cold against my clammy skin. Go to sleep. I'll handle everything. Just rest. I let him lead me to our bedroom. I let him pull back the covers. I crawled into bed, still in my travel clothes, and turned my back to him, facing the wall. I closed my eyes, regulating my breathing, forcing it into the deep, even rhythm of sleep. He stood there for a minute, watching me. I could feel his gaze on my back. Finally, the light clicked off, and the door snicked shut. I lay in the dark, my heart hammering a silent, frantic beat against the mattress. I waited. 1 hour. 2. At 3:05 in the morning, I heard the faint, telltale sound of his own breathing deepening into a real, genuine sleep. I slid out of the bed like a ghost. I didn't turn on a light, moving silently. I grabbed the gym bag I kept in the back of the closet. I didn't pack for comfort. I packed for survival. My spare laptop, the one Spectra didn't know about. 3 USB drives. The few $100s in cash I kept in an old jewelry box. My passport. I changed into dark clothes, put my hair up, and slipped my feet into running shoes. I left my phone, my beautiful, new phone, on the nightstand next to him. It was a tracker. It was a vulnerability. I took nothing he had ever given me. At 3:20 a.m., I eased the apartment door open, cringing at the tiny click of the latch, and slipped into the hallway. I didn't take the elevator. I took the fire stairs, all 38 flights down, my footsteps echoing in the concrete well. I walked for 10 blocks before I found a taxi. I paid in cash for a room at a rundown motel off the interstate, the kind with flickering neon and stains on the carpet. The clerk barely looked at me. I locked the deadbolt, jammed the flimsy metal chair under the doorknob, and sat on the musty bedspread, watching the sun come up. I gave myself 1 hour. At 8:30 a.m., I took a different taxi to the glittering glass tower of Spectra Analytics. This was my territory. This was my fortress. I was a senior analyst. I had built half the systems they used. I would fix this. I walked into the lobby, my head high, and swiped my security card at the main turnstiles. A red light flashed, an angry electronic buzz. Access denied. I tried again. Access denied. The security guard I'd known for 5 years, the one I brought coffee to every morning, looked at me, then looked away, his face suddenly impassive. My blood ran cold. I stepped aside, pulling out my personal burner phone, a cheap prepaid I kept for emergencies, and dialed my boss, Liam Doyle. He picked up on the 4th ring. Ilara. His voice was cold, flat. Liam, it's me. My card isn't working. There's some kind of mistake. Can you come down? A long sigh. Stay where you are. The line clicked dead. 5 minutes later, he emerged from the elevator. He wasn't in his usual expensive suit. He was wearing rumpled slacks and a button-down, his tie already loosened. His eyes were dark, his face grim. He didn't invite me up. He gestured to 2 armchairs in the corner of the public lobby. "Ilara," he started, not meeting my eyes. "As of 8 o'clock this morning, you are on indefinite suspension, pending a full internal investigation." "What, Liam? That's insane! An investigation into what?" "Into you." He finally looked at me, and his gaze was chilling. "The flags started popping up last night, around 10:30. Massive data packet transfers from your account, encrypted communications to an unsecured offshore IP address. It looks, for all the world, Ilara, like you were trying to sell proprietary client data." I was speechless. The timing. Just after Mark had cut the feed. "Liam, that's impossible. That wasn't me. I was on a flight. You have to check the logs." "Someone framed me." "We did," he said, his voice like gravel. "The attempt was initiated from your home IP address. And this morning, the final packet was sent from a public Wi-Fi hotspot in Chicago, near your hotel." I felt the floor drop out from under me. They had planned this. It wasn't just about the drive. It was about my destruction. I finally understood. The hard drive I saw them take, it wasn't the original. It was a clone. They had made a copy weeks, maybe months ago. Last night. They weren't stealing the drive. They were returning the original to the safe, right before I got home, after using my credentials to frame me for a crime I didn't commit. Chloe, with her web of charmed and compromised junior analysts, had given Mark all the digital backdoors he needed. "Liam, you have to believe me," I pleaded, my voice breaking. "Don't talk to me," he said, standing up. "Talk to your lawyer. You'll be hearing from ours." He turned and walked away, leaving me sitting in the lobby of my own career. I sat there, numb, for 10 minutes. Then I fumbled for my burner phone and called the number of the top corporate lawyer in Denver, a man I'd met at a fundraiser. I explained the situation. He was silent. I told him I needed to retain him. "Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice suddenly distant. "I'll need a $50,000 retainer to even look at a case involving Spectra Analytics." "That's fine," I said. "I have it." I gave him my personal credit card number, the one I kept for emergencies, the one Mark didn't know about. He put me on hold. He came back a minute later. "This card has been declined. Mrs. Vance?" "Try my savings account," I said, my voice rising in panic. I gave him the number. Another pause. "That account has a balance of 0, ma'am. In fact, it appears to have been closed." I hung up. I didn't bother checking the joint account. I knew what I would find. I walked out of the tower, back into the harsh sunlight, a ghost in my own life. I had one last stop. I walked the 6 blocks to the main branch of my bank. I walked up to the private client wealth manager, a woman who had helped me set up my first IRA. She wouldn't look me in the eye. "Mrs. Vance, I'm afraid I can't help you. What happened to my accounts, my savings, my stocks?" She swallowed, looking past me. "This morning, your husband, Mr. Vance, filed an emergency petition. He provided sworn statements that you were exhibiting signs of extreme mental instability, paranoia, erratic behavior. What? He had a witness, a Ms. Chloe Sullivan, who corroborated his story. They presented evidence of erratic financial transactions, the ones from last night. The bank, in accordance with the petition, has frozen all your personal assets pending a court-ordered competency hearing." I just stood there. He hadn't just stolen from me. He hadn't just framed me. He had used my panic, my reaction, the very reaction he had orchestrated as proof that I was insane. I had no house, no job, no money, no credit. He had taken my past, my present, and my future. I was completely, utterly, and perfectly ruined. I had $67 in cash. My car, a sedan I had bought with my first big bonus, was my only asset. For 2 days, I was nobody. I parked in the 24-hour lots of grocery stores, sinking down in the driver's seat, my coat pulled over my head, jumping at every approaching set of headlights. I ate stale protein bars from my gym bag and used gas station bathrooms, staring at a face in the mirror that I no longer recognized. The successful, brilliant Ilara Vance was gone. In her place was this hunted, hollow-eyed creature. On the third morning, I woke up with a painful crick in my neck and a feeling of such profound emptiness that it was almost peaceful. The rage was gone. The panic was gone. There was just nothing. I had nowhere to go. My friends, our friends, were his friends, Chloe's friends. Any call I made would be a beacon, leading them straight to me. Except for one. I put the key in the ignition. The engine turned over. A small miracle. I had just enough gas. I started driving, away from the city, toward the quiet, leafy suburbs where my mentor had lived, and died. I hadn't been to Dr. Eris Thorne's house since the funeral 6 months ago. The place was in probate, his distant relatives in Greece already fighting over the estate. A sticker on the front door from a private security company warned that the property was monitored. I didn't care. I parked my car 3 blocks away and walked, my gym bag over my shoulder. I slipped into the overgrown backyard, my heart a dull, heavy stone. I still had it, on the forgotten ring of spare keys in the bottom of my bag. A single, old-fashioned brass key. He'd given it to me years ago, after I'd locked myself out of my own apartment. "For emergencies, Ilara," he'd said, his eyes twinkling. "Everyone needs one safe place." I let myself in through the back kitchen door. The alarm keypad on the wall chirped, demanding a code. I ignored it. Eris was paranoid. The alarm would alert the private company, not the police. I had maybe 10 minutes before a rent-a-cop would cruise by. The air in the house was cold, still, and thick with the smell of dust and old paper. Nothing had been touched. His favorite coffee mug was still in the sink. A half-dead plant drooped on the windowsill. I walked into his study, the place that had once been my sanctuary, my university. It was here he'd taught me everything, and it was here, on the cold hardwood floor, surrounded by his silent, watching books, that I finally collapsed. I put my head in my hands, and I wept. It wasn't the hysterical panic from the flight. It was a deep, guttural, agonizing sob for everything, for my lost life, for my stupidity, for my naivety, for Mark, for Chloe, the sister I had loved, and most of all, for Eris, for not listening to him, for letting him die alone while I was off being blinded by the perfect, polished lie. I cried until I was empty, until my throat was raw and my eyes were swollen shut. When I finally opened them, my vision was blurry. I pushed myself up, my limbs aching. I was done. I had no fight left. I would just wait for the security guard to come and call the police. It would be a relief. And then I saw it. On his desk, in the middle of the organized chaos of circuit boards and schematics, his old brass gyroscope, the heavy, beautiful toy he always spun when he was thinking, claiming it helped him align his thoughts. It was perfectly still, but it wasn't where he usually kept it. It was sitting on a plain white envelope. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and picked it up. My name was on the front, written in Eris's spidery, impatient handwriting. Ilara. Just Ilara. My heart gave a jolt. I tore it open. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a confession. It was just a single sheet of paper from his printer. On it was a single line of meaningless text, a jumble of letters and numbers. F802, 11AC8149, BW20 by NM below it. An email address Prometheus Al Unbound a Proton. Me. Encryption. I whispered. It was a key. But a key to what the email address I had no laptop I could safely use. I stared at the string of characters. It was meaningless, and yet it looked familiar. Not like a password. It looked like a technical specification. Then his voice, clear as a bell, echoed in my memory from a late-night debate we'd had over data security. Everyone keeps their secrets online. Ilara, in digital boxes. It's so foolish. They build fortresses in the clouds. I keep mine in the air. I looked from the note to his shelves, my eyes scanning past the books. In the air. My gaze landed on the door to his home lab. I ran to it, my breath coming fast. I found his old heavy-duty spectrum analyzer, a piece of equipment worth more than my car. I powered it on. Beside it was his main workstation, the one he never ever connected to the internet, an air-gapped system. I sat down, my hands flying. I typed the string of characters, F802, 11ACH149, BW20LAM, into the command line of his data analysis program. My fingers knew the commands before my brain did. It wasn't a password. It wasn't a key. It was a frequency coordinate. I configured the spectrum analyzer to the exact specifications on the note. Frequency 802.11a, channel 149, bandwidth 20 megahertz. The screen filled with static, white noise, a dead channel. I looked back at the desk, the gyroscope. I keep mine in the air. I grabbed the heavy brass toy and the analyzer's directional antenna. I set the gyroscope on the metal workbench. I aimed the antenna directly at it. Then, with a flick of my thumb, I spun it. The gyroscope whirred, finding its balance. A low, steady hum. On the analyzer's screen, the static instantly vanished. It was replaced by a clean, tight band signal, a carrier wave. It was transmitting something. I looked at the workstation. The signal was being piped directly into the analysis program. The program was translating. Text began to scroll across the dark screen. Audio signal detected. Decoding. Decoding. A single sentence appeared, stark and green against the black. They didn't kill me for what I knew. They killed me for what I built. It's in the air. It's in the air. The 6 words on Eris's green-tinted monitor seemed to hum in the silence of the lab. My mind, trained to see patterns, started to connect nodes, old conversations, dismissed arguments, his bitter frustration. He wasn't speaking metaphorically. He was being literal. Project Chimera. I breathed the name. It was his obsession, his great, failed masterpiece. A completely decentralized peer-to-peer, untraceable data network. He had proposed it to the Spectra board 5 years ago. I was in that meeting. I watched them laugh at him. Using unsecured white space frequencies. Eris, the static between old TV channels. It's science fiction. It's unstable. The bandwidth is non-existent. He had been livid. It's the only way to be truly free, he'd shouted. The only way to own your own data, beyond the reach of corporations and governments. They had rejected the proposal and politely, firmly, suggested he take his retirement. He'd done it, but he hadn't stopped working. He had built it, and he had hidden his entire life's work inside it. The security alarm on the wall was still silent. Either the service had been cut off by the probate lawyers or, more likely, Eris had rerouted it to his own personal offline server years ago. I was safe. For now. I spent the next hour in a state of frantic, focused clarity. I had to tune into a ghost. I cannibalized pieces of Eris's equipment, connecting the spectrum analyzer to a high-gain directional antenna, interfacing all of it with his air-gapped workstation. This wasn't like logging onto the internet. This was like deep space exploration. Searching for a single structured signal in an ocean of cosmic noise. I spent the entire night. The coordinates he'd left, the frequency for a defunct digital-to-analog broadcast channel, were the starting point. I scanned the bandwidth, megahertz by megahertz. The sky outside the grimy lab window was turning from black to a sick, bruised purple. My eyes burned. My fingers were cramped. Nothing. Just static. Just the ghosts of old broadcasts. I was failing him. Then, at 5:13 in the morning, I saw it. It wasn't a shout, it was a whisper, a flicker of structured data, a signal with a purpose, hiding beneath the noise. It was him. It was Chimera. I locked the signal. My workstation screen, which had been a waterfall of static, went black. A single old-school command prompt appeared, blinking patiently. I had no map, no user interface. This was his private world. My fingers flew across the keyboard, typing in the raw, forgotten commands he had taught me. I navigated his directory structure. It was vast, chaotic, and beautiful. It was his mind, mapped out in code. There were terabytes of data, scientific research, mathematical proofs, and files with names like Fool's Board Spectra. How could I find his message in all this? I typed a command to list all hidden files. A long list scrolled by, and one file name stopped my heart. Tendau 24 October 24th. My birthday. The day I'd met him. The day he always called my origin point. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type. I navigated to the directory. Inside, there was a single file. For Alara, wave. I typed the command to play it. The old speakers on his workstation, caked in dust, crackled to life with a sharp pop. Then, silence. Then, his voice. It was hoarse, thin, and terrifyingly weak, but it was him. Ilara. He took a long, ragged breath, a sound of profound effort. If you are hearing this, then my heart attack has arrived. I clamped my hand over my mouth, my sob catching in my throat. But it was not natural, he rasped. It was injected, potassium chloride. I'd wager, simple, elegant, almost untraceable after a few hours. I was sloppy. I let him get too close. The audio was filled with static and the sound of his pained breathing. You must listen to me, Ilara. There is very little time. Your husband, Mark. The name hit me like a physical blow. He does not work for himself, Eris continued. He's a broker, a high-level asset from a ghost corporation, Ethelred Solutions. They specialize in aggressive intellectual property acquisition. They find targets, and they send in people like Mark to get close. His breathing hitched. He doesn't work alone. He has a handler, the strategist, the one who manages the operation, Chloe Sullivan. I didn't make a sound. I couldn't. I was paralyzed. They're a team, Ilara, Eris whispered, his voice fading. A professional unit, and... Oh, my child, I am so sorry. Their target was never Spectra Analytics. Their target was me. The recording continued, his words a final devastating blade. Spectra was just the way in. They needed access to my circle. They needed you. I saw it all. The perfect, horrifying mosaic. He tried me first, Eris rasped, a cough rattling his chest. Mark. He tried to charm me, offered to consult on my retirement portfolio. I saw him for what he was, a polished salesman, a mirror. I threw him out. So he went to the softer target, the one person who had my complete, unconditional trust, the only one I would ever give my keys to. The audio file clicked. The last thing I heard was a faint, shallow breath, and then silence. I sat there in the cold lab, the first rays of the morning sun cutting through the dusty blinds. The speakers hissed with empty static. It wasn't an affair. It wasn't about my job. It wasn't corporate espionage, my marriage, my best friendship, my entire life for the past 3 years. It was an operation, a long con, a meticulously constructed lie to gain access, to get to him, to get to Chimera. And they had murdered him for it. The static hiss from the dead audio file filled the lab. I didn't move for a long time. The sun was fully up, casting stripes of light across the floor, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The freeze was back, but it wasn't the paralyzing shock from the hotel room. This was different. This was the cold, perfect, absolute clarity of a diamond. My love hadn't just been a lie. It had been a tool. My life hadn't just been collateral damage. It had been the staging ground for an execution. The grief was gone. It had burned away, leaving something hard and sharp in its place. I turned back to the console. The audio file was a breadcrumb. I went back to the root directory of Chimera, my fingers flying across the keys. If Eris left me that, he left me more. I found a directory hidden under a complex name string, but it was really just one word Ethelred. Inside, I found Eris's final masterpiece. The paranoid, brilliant, wonderful old man had been watching them. While Mark and Chloe were busy building their web, Eris had been documenting every thread. They thought he was a doddering old academic. They had no idea he was a counterintelligence agent in his own right. The archive was vast. Encrypted phone calls between Mark and a number I didn't recognize, where Mark complained that the old man was impenetrable. Financial records, tracing back payments from Ethelred through 3 shell corporations into a private account Mark had opened the month he met me. And then, the video. Eris did have cameras, but they weren't connected to any commercial service. They fed directly into this air-gapped server. I watched footage from 8 months ago. Mark in this very lab, alone. He thought Eris was in the city. He was using a scanning device, running it over Eris's equipment. He was hunting for Chimera. I watched another clip, just 3 days before Eris's death. Mark, letting himself into the house, disabling the kitchen camera. But he missed the one in the hallway. I watched him prepare a syringe from a vial in his pocket. I shut the file. I couldn't breathe. I kept digging. There was one last protocol. It was labeled Helios Check-In. It was a dead man's switch. It was elegant, simple, and absolutely lethal. Eris had to log into the Chimera network every 7 days and enter a rotating cryptographic key. If he failed to check in, a chain reaction would begin. The entire Chimera network, all of Eris's research, his schematics, and the entire Ethelred evidence file would be unencrypted and broadcast to a list of email addresses. A list that included the top investigative reporters at the Post and the Times, the SEC, and the director of the FBI. The last successful check-in was 6 months and 5 days ago. And then I finally understood. The realization hit me so hard I almost laughed. Mark and Chloe. They weren't trying to sell Spectra's data. They didn't care about my hard drive. They were looking for this. They had killed Eris, but they had failed their mission. They never found the dead man's switch. They never found the key. They are still hunting for it. They are living in sheer, stomach-churning terror, knowing that at any second, this entire network could go public and expose them and Ethelred for murder and espionage. They framed me, froze my assets, and labeled me insane because they believe I have the key. They think Eris gave it to me. They think I'm broken, penniless, and hiding under a bridge somewhere. They have no idea I'm sitting in the arsenal. The arsenal, I soon discovered, was not just digital. In a folder marked Contingency E. Vance, I found one last file. It wasn't encrypted data. It was a wire transfer confirmation. He had set up a Swiss bank account in my name. 5 years ago. I used Eris's satellite uplink to access the portal. The balance was just over $2 million. Tangled assets, the note read. They can't freeze what they don't know exists. I was no longer a victim. I was a beneficiary. I was the executor of his will. I sat at Eris's workstation, the full power of his ghost network at my fingertips. They had cut me off from my old life. Fine. I would buy a new one. I used the secure uplink and Eris's money. I didn't hire a divorce lawyer. I retained an off-the-books legal crisis firm out of Washington, D.C., the kind that specialized in hostile takeovers and making problems disappear. I wired the retainer. Next, I hired a private cybersecurity firm. A small, brutally effective team of ex-Mossad analysts based in Tel Aviv. I sent them the Ethelred data package. I gave them one mission: find every digital footprint mark Chloe and Ethelred Solutions had ever left, and prepare to burn them to the ground. They thought I was alone. They thought I was silent. I was now backed by a team of sharks, a private intelligence agency, and $2 million. The hunt was over. The war had just begun. I turned back to the Chimera network. It was time to deploy my first asset. I routed a message through Eris's untraceable system. It wouldn't come from a number or an email. It would arrive on my ex-boss's phone like a message from God. I sent the text to Liam Doyle's personal cell. You were played. Ethelred Solutions used you to frame me and infiltrate Spectra. I have the proof. Proof that will either save your company or bury you. Your choice. Meet me. You have 2 hours. Bring a full, unredacted copy of every system log related to my account, and bring proof of your own betrayal. I set the terms. A public place. Maximum exposure. Maximum anonymity. The food court at the Tabor Center during the lunch rush. The noise was a shield, a cacophony of conversations, clattering trays, and bad music. I sat in a hard plastic booth, my back to the wall, watching the entrance. I had been there for 30 minutes, nursing a cold coffee, invisible. Liam Doyle arrived looking like a man who hadn't slept in 2 days, which I noted with grim satisfaction. He hadn't. His suit was rumpled, his face was a pasty gray, and his eyes darted around the food court, a hunted animal in a zoo. He was no longer my boss. He was a liability. He saw me and slid into the booth, his anger a brittle, high-frequency wave. You have 5 minutes, Ilara, he hissed, keeping his voice low. You have any idea the kind of trouble you're in? The kind of trouble you've put me in? The feds are sniffing around. Our biggest contract is on the line. Good, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I pushed my cheap burner phone across the sticky table. You should be scared, but you're scared of the wrong person. He glanced at the phone. What is this? That's the proof I promised. He tapped the screen. I had isolated a 2-minute audio file from Eris's archives. It was Chloe, her voice, warm and flirty, talking to a junior analyst in my department, an analyst whose access codes I recognized. She wasn't just seducing him, she was instructing him, walking him through the installation of a packet sniffer on the server. I'd seen his name on the logs Liam claimed were mine. Liam listened, his face draining of what little color it had. He knew the analyst's name. This is impossible. How did you get this? That doesn't matter, Liam, I said, leaning forward. What matters is that it's not just him. It's 3 of your people. Chloe and Mark cultivated them for over a year. They built a backdoor right through your multi-million-dollar security. The data breach you suspended me for, it was them, using my credentials as a smokescreen while they planted a logic bomb. I let the next words land. Spectra is about to lose the Department of Defense contract. Am I wrong? He visibly flinched. That was the one. The biggest, most lucrative account in the company's history. They set you up, Liam, I said, my voice flat. They created a security failure so catastrophic that when the DoD pulls out, the board won't just fire you, they will hand you over to the SEC to cover themselves. You are the scapegoat. You and me. He stared at the phone, then at me. The anger was gone, replaced by pure, uncut fear. What do you want? An alliance, I said. This is Ethelred Solutions, a corporate intelligence firm that murders people for intellectual property. They murdered Eris Thorne. They are framing me, and they are using you. I have the entire archive Eris built on them, enough to expose everything, but it's not enough. I need to catch them in the act. I laid out the deal. I give you the complete evidence package on the internal traders. You get to be the hero. You find the real breach, you save the DoD contract, and you save your career. In return, you give me the keys. The keys. I'm locked out. Liam, I need back in. but not as me. I need a ghost. A top-level administrative account that isn't logged, isn't monitored. I need secure, secret access to every byte of data moving through Spectra's servers. I need to watch Mark and Chloe's every move, and they can't know I'm there. He didn't hesitate for more than a second. A man like Liam Doyle is a creature of pure self-preservation. He reached into his briefcase and slid a small silver USB drive across the table. "It's a hardware key," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "It gives you a blind tunnel into the main server core. It bypasses the standard authentication logs. Find what you need, Alara. And for God's sake, get me the proof on those internal traitors. You have 24 hours. He stood up and disappeared into the lunchtime crowd, a man walking back to his own execution, now holding a pardon. I palmed the key. I returned to Aris's house, my new command center. I plugged Liam's key into Aris's air-gapped workstation, using the satellite uplink to bridge the connection. My screen filled with the familiar welcome interface of the Spectra network. I was a ghost in my own machine. But I needed one more piece. I had the evidence. I had the access. I needed a weapon. I needed a voice. I used Aris's encrypted email service, the Prometheus R Unbound account. I pulled up the contact list he had embedded in the dead man's switch. There were 3 names under media. The first 2 were at Major Papers. The third one, I recognized, Nina Rosario. Nina had been the sharpest investigative journalist in the country a decade ago. She had gotten too close to a story about a shadowy tech firm, and overnight, her career was surgically destroyed. She was accused of fabricating sources, her reputation was shredded, and she vanished. She had been Ethelred's first victim. I sent the email. "Nina, my name is Alara Vance. I am Eris Thorne's protege." He left me his archive. I have the full, unredacted file on Ethelred Solutions. I have the wiretaps, the bank records, and the proof of what they did to you 10 years ago. And I have the proof they murdered him. The reply came back in less than 5 minutes. "I've chased Ethelred's ghost for a decade. They don't just kill careers, they kill people. If you're real, you're in danger. If this is a trap, you're a fool. I don't print stories unless they are backed by unbreakable evidence." I typed my reply. "I'm not giving you a story. I'm giving you a bomb. I have Aris's proof. I have live access to the network they are currently attacking. I am going to give you a real-time data feed of the crime as it happens." Her response was 3 words. "Get me the file." The board was set. Aris's archive was my intelligence. Liam's access was my live surveillance. And Nina Rosario was my cannon, aimed directly at the heart of their empire. From the absolute digital silence of Aris's lab, I watched them, using the ghost access Liam had provided. I had a god's-eye view of Spectra's network. Mark and Chloe were getting frantic. They were clumsy. They were running desperate, high-noise scans from external IPs, probing firewalls, searching for any trace of Aris's work. They were hunting for the dead man's switch, and Ethelred, their invisible masters, were clearly tightening the leash. I could feel their panic. They had destroyed my life, labeled me insane, and yet they were the ones who were terrified. They were terrified of the ghost in the machine. They were terrified of me. They believed I was hiding somewhere, broken and penniless, clutching the one key that could destroy them. It was time to give the ghosts what they were looking for. I spent 12 hours, using my intimate knowledge of Spectra's architecture and my understanding of Aris's unique coding style. I built a trap, a ghost file. It was a masterpiece of forgery, a massive, heavily encrypted data packet, layered with Aris's digital fingerprints and seeded with keywords related to Project Chimera. I named it Helios Contingency Final. It looked, for all the world, like the dead man's switch they were dying to find. I couldn't just leave it in the open. I had to let them discover it. I found an old, deprecated diagnostic port in the server architecture, one that had been flagged for removal months ago. I knew Mark was monitoring it. I'd seen his probes in the logs. I accidentally dropped a corrupted log file from that port, a file that just happened to contain a single tantalizing data fragment referencing the location of my new ghost file. I baited the hook before they could bite. I had to make them hungry. I had to make them desperate. I sent the complete, unredacted evidence package on the internal traders, the audio files, the network logs, the video to Liam Doyle. He acted with the swift, brutal efficiency of a man saving his own skin. Within an hour, Spectra's security descended. The 3 analysts Chloe had compromised were escorted from the building, their access revoked, their careers finished. Mark and Chloe had just lost their eyes and ears inside the company. They were blind. At the exact same moment, I authorized my legal team in Washington. They filed a massive civil suit against both Mark Vance and Chloe Sullivan. It wasn't a complex case. It was simple, brutal, and fast. It was for the illegal withdrawal of every cent from our joint accounts, backed by the sworn affidavits proving his competency claims were fraudulent. A judge, seeing the clear and present evidence of financial malfeasance, signed an immediate emergency injunction. Every account I could link to Mark and Chloe was frozen. Their cash, their checking, their brokerage accounts, even the offshore shell company I'd had my Tel Aviv team uncover. I cut off their money. They were blind, they were broke, and they were running out of time. Ethelred wouldn't tolerate failure. The dead man's switch was their only bargaining chip, their only way out. I watched the vulnerability I had left open. I didn't have to wait long. It started at 2:17 in the morning. A single, cautious ping on the deprecated diagnostic port. Mark. He was sloppy, using a remote access protocol he thought was hidden, coming in from an IP address he'd spoofed out of Eastern Europe. He was trying to be quiet, but to me, his digital footsteps were a marching band. He was trying to breach the server and exfiltrate the Helios contingency final file. He bit. He bit down hard on a steel hook. He thought he was alone. But I was there, a silent administrator in the server's core. And I wasn't the only one. Liam Doyle was watching with me, connected on a secure, encrypted video call, his face pale and sweating in the glow of his own monitor. "He's in," Liam whispered, his voice tinny over the connection. "He's past the outer firewall. He's inside the network." "I know," I said, my voice cold. I let him in. Mark thought he was navigating Spectra's servers. He wasn't. He was inside a honeypot, a virtual sandbox I had created that mirrored the Spectra architecture perfectly, down to the last byte. He moved quickly. He saw the file. He saw the Helios file and locked onto it. He initiated his proprietary extraction tool, a piece of brutal, efficient code I recognized instantly from Eris's files. It was Ethelred's signature weapon, a digital battering ram. He launched the attack. He thought he was pulling the file out of Spectra, but I was the gatekeeper. I didn't just record his actions. I seized the connection. In the space of a single microsecond, I rerouted the entire data stream. I pointed his attack vector away from my honeypot and aimed it directly at its origin. He was no longer hacking Spectra analytics. He was, without his knowledge, launching Ethelred's most powerful, illegal, and proprietary data theft tool directly at Ethelred Solutions' own central server in Virginia. He was, in effect, pulling the pin on a grenade and dropping it in his own lap. He was destroying himself. The digital scream from Ethelred's servers was almost instantaneous. Mark's attack, using their own proprietary tool, hit their firewall like a missile. On my screen, I watched their internal network light up like a Christmas tree, a cascade of red alerts. They thought they were under attack from a rival. They were, in a way. "They're scrambling," Liam whispered over our secure channel, his voice awed. "They're trying to trace the attack vector. They think it's coming from us, from Spectra." "They're half right," I said. "Now watch." Ethelred's defenses were good. I had to give them that. Their system administrators were trying to isolate the breach, to build a digital wall to lock Mark's tool out. They were shutting down the very node he was using. He's losing his connection, Liam said, his voice rising in panic. He already served his purpose, I replied. I pressed the enter key. The command initiated the payload, the ghost file, the Helios contingency that Mark had just successfully delivered into the heart of their system was not a file. It was a Trojan. It was Eris's final, beautiful, terrible piece of code. It wasn't a virus that destroyed. It was a key that unlocked. As Ethelred's admins slammed the door shut, they trapped the fox inside their henhouse. My virus activated. It didn't delete data, it decrypted it. It moved through their servers, finding every eyes-only file, every classified project, every hidden ledger. It unlocked every secret, every crime, every murder Ethelred had ever committed, and it pushed all of it, every single byte, into the open, invisible, decentralized network Eris had built. It pushed it all to Chimera. It pushed it all to me. At the exact same moment, 300 miles away, Nina Rosario hit publish. Her story, fed by the real-time, undeniable proof streaming from my console, went live. It wasn't just an article. It was an explosion. The headline was a masterpiece of controlled rage. Widow of tech genius exposes billion-dollar murder and espionage ring. The internet shattered. The story wasn't just allegations. It contained screenshots of Ethelred's ledgers. It had the audio file of Mark planning the hack. It had the chemical analysis Eris had run on the toxins he expected. Nina, true to her word, had not just published. She had forwarded her entire package to her contacts at the FBI 45 minutes before the story went live. As the sun rose over Denver, 2 federal raid teams, acting on evidence of corporate espionage, conspiracy to commit murder, and active cyber terrorism, moved simultaneously. One team hit Ethelred's sleek, unnamed headquarters in Virginia. The other, armed with a no-knock warrant, smashed through the solid oak door of my penthouse. They found Mark and Chloe. They weren't in bed. They were in the living room, frantically trying to wipe their hard drives, surrounded by monitors. The agents didn't find a sordid domestic dispute. They found a high-tech command center, the screens still displaying the active, illegal connection to Spectra. They found the Ethelred attack tool running. They found the bank transfers, the communications from their handlers. They found them red-handed, knee-deep in the digital blood of their own operation. I was not there. I was in Eris's quiet, dusty lab, running on 72 hours of no sleep and pure, cold adrenaline. I was on a video call. My face was clean. My hair was pulled back. I looked calm. I looked professional. On the other side of the screen were 4 members of the Spectra Analytics Board of Directors. They looked like they were facing a firing squad. Ms. Vance. Ilara, the chairman stammered. We want to offer our most profound apologies. Liam Doyle has been terminated. Naturally. A full investigation is underway. We owe you everything. You saved this company. Another director leaned in. We want you back, Ilara. Whatever you want. Head of Security. Chief Technology Officer. Name your price. We need you. I let the silence stretch for a full 10 seconds. I looked at their pale, terrified, compromised faces, and for the first time in 3 years, I smiled a real smile. No, I said. I ended the call. My legal team is still sorting through the wreckage. The Ethelred assets, what's left of them after the federal seizure, are being liquidated. A significant portion, designated as restitution, is being funneled into a new, independent cybersecurity firm. My firm. I am sitting in Eris's lab, but it's not his anymore. It's the new headquarters. I'm executing his real will. I am taking Project Chimera public. His invisible network will no longer be a hiding place. It will be a shield, a company dedicated to protecting the brilliant, the hunted, the ones who build things worth stealing. My revenge wasn't destroying their lives. It was building a better one from the ashes of mine. I was no longer frozen. I was the storm. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm so curious. Where are you all listening from? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to connect. So please share your thoughts on what happened. Make sure to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories and like this video. And if you really want to support the channel, please hit that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.